Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Today we have with us Christina Sergnese. How did I do?
You did good.
Okay, good deal.
It's Sergnese. You did good though.
She works with a lot of coaches, and I particularly love how open and vulnerable she is about her journey to get to where she is. And I want to first and foremost, Christina, welcome you to the show. And then I'd love for you to just give our audience kind of a high level overview of who you are and what your business is.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and just be able to share anything that I can for those that are listening here, and taking any nuggets away. Maybe you could relate, maybe whoever's listening could relate, but my journey was a whirlwind, and it was a lot of triumphs and tribulations and breakthroughs to get to where I am today. And of course, there's always new levels, new devils. And prior to becoming a business coach, I have been a career-long saleswoman. I spent 14 years in digital sales and marketing and just other various sales roles as well. I'm such an achiever and always like to have different things on the go. So always being an entrepreneur at heart, I decided to also start a wedding planning business back in 2017. And it was amazing. I was featured in some of the top world magazines and was scaling that, but was just feeling so unfulfilled and anxious and just not in alignment. There was just something that was off. And I went through my own personal development, my own self-discovery at that time. And about a month and a half later, maybe closer to two and a half months, I should say, I found out the online world. I always thought you had to be some fitness influencer to be on social media. I wasn't very familiar at all about the online coaching world until I was working with coaches to grow my wedding planning business. And I kind of got into the feel of it. And during my own transformational journey, I discovered the online world. I decided to close down my wedding planning business and pursue my life dream of always wanting to be a coach. Just wasn't really sure what kind of coaching I would do. So I decided to, once I discovered that, I decided to package up my sales and marketing skills and transition online. I closed down my wedding planning business, and here I am having the pleasure to work with new and intermediate coaches to start grow and scale their own online business without the overwhelm and all those questions and burnouts that might come along the way.
I seen you talk on your website about this phenomenon that I think a lot of coaches go through. And this really is true in a lot of industries. So I know a lot of people listening to this podcast, they may have, your conventional brick and mortar business. They're in all different sorts of industries, not just, service-based businesses. But I've seen this, especially in the coaching industry, where people are inspired to help others. And everybody is excited about this whole entrepreneur lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. Where you get to be your own boss and you get to set your own hours. And then you dive in and you are kind of fumbling around. And so you reach out and you get a little bit of help and you take this business course and you enroll in that coaching program that's supposed to help you to create this successful, thriving business. And pieces of it are missing, right? Pieces of the success formula are missing. So you go through all the motions and you're checking off all the things on the checklist in those programs. And then you're trying to implement this in the real world and it's not working. Mm-hmm. So when you're working with your clients, having been through this yourself, what are you seeing? What are some of the mindsets that are causing people to, in some cases, not really treat their online service-based business like a real business?
Such a beautiful question. I feel like I can talk about this for days just by all of the things that I've had to overcome and just helping my clients. And like you said, we come into the online world of, it's painted as like a fantasy. It's the 3 hour work day, the 4 hour work week, and we all want this autonomy, and we all feel like there's this, we're kind of torn. Sometimes some of my clients and some people out there appreciate the 9 to 5, appreciate the corporate world. And then there's also that part of the entrepreneurship where it's like, well, you're basically selling your soul if you're working to 9 to 5 and you're making other people rich and all of these things. So you're like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm torn. And, you're going back between the two. And I think what ends up happening with the online world is it's painted in this success is linear. Join my program, follow these steps, you'll have 6 figures in 6 weeks and bada boom, bada bing. But that is not the case, because everything is one in its own divine timing and its own divine sequence of events that need to happen for you to get to where you want to be able to hold that. And the thing that I found the most that made the biggest difference for me, and even with my clients, is something that most people might not even think of, but it's your nervous system. It's how you actually feel inside. Like I do like a 3-prong method where it's the nervous system, the mindset, and then the strategy, because if you don't feel safe and good in your body, it's really hard to attract that success that you want. And when we're online and we're consuming information, and in every which way we turn, there's someone hitting a 5-figure month, a 5-figure launch, a 6-figure launch. And we're wondering, okay, when am I going to get that piece of success? Like, when is it going to be my turn? And we compare, and we feel like because we're in a 90-day program, we put this arbitrary time frame on our success. And what ends up happening is we put all this pressure on ourselves. And if we don't get it, we classify ourselves as a failure. We're not cut out for this. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. And all of those inner gremlins come up. And I found when I transitioned into the online world, I didn't really realize how much limiting beliefs that I had. I never, they never came up in corporate. You push them down, and you come into the online world and you sell yourself as a brand. And all of a sudden you get hit with a ton of bricks of, oh my God, I don't feel good enough, and all of these things. So it's really taking a lot of the things that you see online with a grain of salt, and nobody really paints the whole picture. And we don't know what other people's privileges may have been or are when they are running these businesses. So it's tough because we're constantly comparing the back of our life to someone's front of their life, the highlight reel. And when you are scrolling, it's really shifting that mindset from, okay, cool, she did it, it's possible for me, not comparing in a place of lack. Because I know for me, I made other people's success my failure. I felt like they were taking something away from me. And then you show up and you're like, I got to try harder, and you just overdo it and you burn yourself out. And the biggest piece of advice is really clearing that crap in your own mind, like your own internal system, and the anxiety and all those things that come up, is getting to a place of neutral and really walking and enjoying the journey and falling in love with growth and mastering one thing at a time. Because a lot of new coaches come in and they're trying to do it all. They're trying to do what 6-figure businesses are doing, but they haven't even laid a foundation, like a strong foundation. So I think it's really important to take everything as a grain of salt and focus on yourself, focus on your own journey, and remember that you're creating your own 6-7-figure story. It's your own to tell, and not to and it's hard. Like, we all fall into that trap from time to time, but it's so important to catch yourself and be like, okay, I'm in a story, I'm doing it again. Let me take a step back, let me take a breath, and let me get back at it again. And just remember, fall in love with growth.
Let's talk a little bit more about that whole body piece, right? The fact is, a lot of business owners are dealing with stress, a lot of mental load. They're, in some cases, not taking particularly good care of their physical body because, I mean, who has time, right?
Yep. Oh, yep.
So these factors do adversely affect an individual's business. And a lot of people wait until they've created some type of health crisis for themselves to deal with it.
Yep.
When you're working with your clients, you build that right in. You're creating a foundation for them. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I think that for individuals who haven't prioritized their health or their well-being, it's very easy to discount that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the first things that I do with my clients. I really do believe now, after going through my own phase of burnouts and all that, is going slow to speed up. And that was something that honestly, I just thought it was a cute saying. I'm like, oh, that's cute. Slow down to speed up. Until you get burnt out, you really understand that at an entirely different level. And knowing that it's not about how much you're getting done, what you're doing, and not getting more done. It's getting more done in less time. And that was a really hard concept for me to actually understand. And you touched upon our bodies and, who has time for that. I'm such a health and fitness advocate. I've always have been. And about maybe 8 or 9 months into growing my coaching business, that was the first thing to go. My health was the first thing to drop off because, again, who has time for that, right? I was thinking of, okay, I want to go to the gym, but I had a block of, if I go to the gym, I don't have time to work on my business. It's taking time away. But it's so important to work on yourself. And so with my clients, like the first thing we do is like really designing dreaming up their ideal day, their ideal life, and putting blocks in to actually live it, because we feel like, I'll be better at money when I have more money, or I'll be better at time management when, I'm better at time management. But all of these things are prerequisites to actually get to the phase that you want to get to in business. It's about delegating. It's about prioritizing yourself more than absolutely anything else, because it's all energy. We're just compounded. Like it's just the effects of energy and how we're showing up and who we are when we show up. So I really like to work with my clients and really understand, what do they want? What does success actually look like to them? Because if we don't have a definition, we're always chasing that next best thing. We're always chasing those like shiny objects, and we get like a decoy gets put in front of us, and then we go along with it. But that's really like a testament to make sure like you are really committed. And then when you kind of give into that, it's like, it's almost like the universe is saying, or God, whoever you believe in is, she's not quite ready yet. And really creating that definition. So what does success look like for you? What does an ideal day look like for you? Like who's your ideal person? Like, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want to show up? And, what does confidence look like to you? What is time freedom? Like, it's really nice and cute to see all of these quotes and people talking about financial freedom and time. But what does that actually mean to you? And until you have those definitions of confidence and what does family mean, what does love mean, relationships mean, like all of those things, you're always going to be flustered and chasing everything. So it's taking that step back, creating your own definitions to those things. And the hardest part is living them. Because it's a lifestyle. Like it really is a lifestyle more than anything else. So how can you incorporate those little things? Like, do you want a private chef one day to make you green juice? Okay, cool. Start making yourself green juice every day. Show yourself that love, that compassion, because when you do, you're going to show up as your most vibrant self, your most energetic self, and you will, become magnetized. Because, we might hear about magnetizing your ideal clients, and it's not some spell or thing that you would do. It's just simply showing up and just being in your best energy and your best self. And honing in the things that you want to cultivate. And again, calming that internal system, like really understanding how you work, how your mind works, and how you operate, and being okay with that, being okay with being different and running your business differently. It's really like, know thyself that we always hear. And it's so true. And even more true when you're running a business, because you're going to be wearing a lot of hats in the beginning, and always, but especially in the beginning. So I think it's really important to understand that about yourself and how you work and how you operate, and what things actually mean to you. And if there's anything outside of that, that it's not for you because it doesn't align. So you can scrap it away, stay in your lane, put your blinders on, and just keep moving forward.
Let's go on a little bit of a tangent off of that point, because you've mentioned energy and you've mentioned alignment, and you're really talking about just being true to yourself. So I'd love for you to take a little bit of time and share from your perspective what role that plays in business.
Yeah, it's like, where do I want to go with this? I feel like there's a lot that I can say. The role that it would play is, once you understand how you work and your mind, and just the limiting beliefs and the stories that you hold on to, and really, rephrasing those and creating new stories. But you don't have to feel what ends up happening when you step into that new life, that new self of yours. And, how, if you think about someone you may idolize, like, what do you idolize about them? Because what you might see in them could be something you're rejecting in yourself. It could be something maybe you desire. So it's like, okay, well, I really like that. How can I, emulate that? And not be a carbon copy, but how can I take that, make it my own, and apply it in the way that fits me and my personality? And once you start unraveling that and really stepping into who you are, you don't feel like you have to come on and perform. You don't feel like you're performing. You don't feel like you need to put up in a performance and always show up in the most vibrant and polished self, because we all know that's not always the case. Like, we can have a million emotional roller coasters in a day. Like, some days, you could be waking up and you feel anxious, and then you kind of get back into a flow state, and then you might dip down. And, it's not beating yourself up and not feeling like you have to be on or perfect or in this high vibe and positive state before you show up online. You can show up and be like, I'm having a hard time, and this is what I'm going through, or, I've gone through this, and here's how I overcome it. And just showing up as your real honest self, like sharing your journey, documenting that. It makes business and life and everything so much more easier, because you're not worried. You're just showing up and you're speaking your truth. You're standing in it, and people will relate. We all can relate to a hard day or a hard moment. We can all relate to both like successes and failures. And I think people want to see that, right? I don't ever want to invest in someone or follow someone who's just perfect all the time. Like, my life is perfect, I get everything I want, and this and that. It's just like, oh, okay, so you haven't actually had to overcome anything. So how are you going to help me overcome my stuff if you haven't overcome anything yourself? And, we feel like we have to put on this like perfect show. And I know I did. And you can be sad and still stand in big energy. You can be in a depressed state and still stand in big energy. You can, it doesn't matter how you're feeling, as long as you just show up as yourself, no matter what. And if you don't feel great, don't show up. It's not a big deal. Your business is not going to crumble in, a day of not showing up on stories or anything like that. But the biggest thing that happens when you start owning that is you hold your own power. You even when those undercurrents come, you stand in it and know, this will pass. I will be okay. I can show up and be real with my audience and connect with them. And it's just such a huge relief to just show up and be yourself and speak your truth and not have to feel like you got to be somebody else or pretend you're someone else or pretend you're further along than you really are. Just people want to follow your journey and your story. I think it's so important to share that.
There's a lot of talk about imposter syndrome, which we know is a serious mindset obstacle for a lot of people, especially when you're in the earlier stages of your business and you are looking at what appears to be all of these other successful, accomplished people in your industry. And you're thinking to yourself, how can I compare to that? How can I compete with that? So there's a lot of facades that are created. And when you made the comments about, seeing what I can't remember exactly how you put it, but it was beautiful. The front of,
the back of our life.
Yes. It's not just in the online world. It's not just in service-based industries. It is across the board for business owners. Doesn't matter if you're in private practice, maybe you're a chiropractor, or you could own a chain of salons. I mean, any different, scenario. You look at your peers, and it's fascinating too, because I've seen this with individuals who've been really successful in one industry. And then they switch over to a new industry. They start a new business. And they just went from being at the top of their game, the top of their industry, to now being the newbie. And how that can really mentally throw people off. So there's always this comparing and feeling inadequate. And what you're sharing here about just get comfortable in your own skin, right? We're not saying that, if you are having a really off day, you got triggered, you haven't worked through some of your old stuff and you're not handling it particularly well, that you have to go and put on a big, make a big scene about it, right? But I think what the real gold is here is just be okay with where you're at. You have value. You are in this industry for a reason, especially if it feels aligned for you, and there are people who need you. So now I want to just shift gears a little bit. And I want to ask you, I know you've talked a little bit about some of your own mindset stuff, but is there anything that you can share with us that you had to overcome? Maybe something that was particularly challenging for you to overcome on your own mindset journey in order to get to where you are today?
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit. But the biggest thing for me, being in the sales world and, being in that, I want to say almost like the Wolf of Wall Street kind of environments where it's just like the hustle and the bustle, and the harder you work, the harder, the more success you'll overcome. And that was one of the biggest shifts I had to make. And the biggest belief I had to overcome is that the harder you work, the more successful you are. And, sure, in, the corporate world, if you're the first one in and the last one out, like you get hand clapped for that, or you're answering emails at 10 p.m. Like you get acknowledged for that. That's like how you kind of get promoted. And it creates that mindset, like work hard and more success, but it's just so far from the truth. And that was being a high achiever. That was something I really had to overcome, because I could bury myself in work. I love it. It's a huge passion of mine and I can get lost in it, but I didn't have a balance. I wasn't able to shut off. My mind was always like thinking, and I always felt like I had to be on social media, like literally every second of the day, and like, picking up my phone, like 30 seconds later, as if something were to change. Like it was such a bad habit. for me to break. And just that mindset of work hard and more success was a tough one, because I let everything else go. Like, I was not paying attention, like my poor husband sometimes. Like, I was just always about like work and developing and being better and overcoming this and doing that. And that the results, I felt like I was my results. Like, I am my performance. I am the success. Like, that's where I got validation from. And especially in the early stages, you're not getting any of that, right? It takes time to build that up. It takes time to build that momentum and that name for yourself. And because I was so attached to it, I felt like a complete failure. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I just didn't feel good. I'm like, why isn't this working for me? And, being in programs and watching everyone else surpass me. And I'm like, how is this happening? How is this possible? We're getting the same training. We have the same coach. And it was because I was coming from that place and that energy of like overdoing it. And, I guess overdo it, overdoes it, like that whole thing. And I really had to unravel that. I had to know that the bank account wasn't who I was. Me showing up on stories and the information and the sales and all of that wasn't determined by who I was. And which is probably why the speed up to slow down became such a core teaching of mine, is because I really, really had to learn how to slow down and enjoy the process, master one step at a time, and not try and do absolutely everything. And, just be in the same spot 3 months later, because that's just even more crushing to the ego. So it was, letting go of the thoughts of, the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And also, I said earlier, where other people's success became my failure, I really had to let go of that and really realize there are a million brands out there. I purchased so many books. I purchased from so many different brands. I purchased different planners from different people. So there's always going to be a market for everybody. And there's always going to be people who want another coach, a different coach, and want to work with you in particular. So that was another thing I had to let go as well, is knowing that there is a community, there is people that will align with me, just like we buy from different brands. And the same thing happens online too.
That shift from that scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is really a powerful takeaway. So now, Christina, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I primarily hang out on Instagram. You can come over, say hi, let me know where you came from. I always have free things going on or things that I send over from podcast communities. So don't be shy, say hi. I won't bite. And you can find me on Instagram.
Okay. And they just type in your name, or?
Yep, just my name. Yep, Christina Sergnese. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Christina. I love your energy. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And I have to thank all of our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.